My friend, in yet another permutation of why the ongoing treatises, the daily installments of Candace are not only important as to understand what's going on regarding the variety of issues unented regarding, Charlie Kirk and TPUSA and everything, but it provides, separate and distinct from that, a kind of a tutorial, a daily instructional, if you will, on a lot of issues such as conspiracies and how to look at what's happening. What I suggest to you, and I'm dead serious about this, get someone, maybe a youngster, maybe a relative, somebody in your household, somebody from Gen X or whatever the heck it is. Get them to watch this. And then afterwards explain to them, here's the theory behind this. This is what this is about. This is the overarching story. Because what this is not a recap, so to speak, not a transcription, not a list of claims, but an attempt, on my part, at least a legitimate attempt, to articulate a way of thinking that many people sense but struggle to describe and expatiate and limn and understand and grasp, especially right now. It is about pressure and awareness and power, and the strange feeling that the world is no longer behaving the way it once did. Sound familiar? It's about why certain questions provoke fury and anger instead of answers, and why that reaction alone tells you something very important. You see, at the center of it all, at the center of this, the epicenter, so to speak, of this way of thinking, is a simple observation. When systems are confident, they tolerate curiosity and questions. When they're fragile, when there's really nothing there, they punish it. They won't tolerate it. The intensity of the response tells you more than the content of the question ever could, especially when you see a lot of these so-called influencers who are being paid by somebody or something to attack Candace at all levels. They're told, get them. Never refute what she's saying. You notice this? Never refute the basics or bases of what she's saying. Just instead go after her. You see, that's the atmosphere that we're living in right now. This is incredible. And it's not disagreement. It's not debate. But it's a kind of a weird hair trigger hostility towards noticing patterns and asking for coherence or refusing to accept official explanations at face value. Let me tell you something. This is a tutorial. Listen to me. This is the sermon of the day. There is a growing sense, my friend, that reality itself feels very unstable. Not in a sci-fi way, I don't mean that, but in a psychological and cultural way, as in psyops, as in conspiracies, as in manipulation of the narrative. That's exactly what this is. People experience, I guess you'd call it a mismatch between what they remember, what they intuit, and what they are told to believe. And when they voice that kind of mismatch or disconnect, they're not corrected. They're mocked. And they're labeled. Has this happened to you? Happens to me all the time, my friend. I'm at home. In fact, if they don't mock me, if people don't dispute what I'm saying, I must not be doing something right, because there's no solace in the majority. Believe me. They're worried about tone and influence or danger. And the message is not you are wrong. The message is stop looking. Remember what I'm telling you. Remember what Uncle Lionel's telling you. The left loves to tell you what you can't say, but the right wants to tell you what you can't think. And that's the difference. Listening to Candace reminds me that the reaction is the first clue that something very interesting, something very deep and much deeper is happening. You see, this framework starts from the idea that power no longer operates primarily through force. Nope. It operates through narrative control, through the myth, the mythology, the fable, what we all say and what we're allowed to say, and through emotional conditioning and constant distraction. Oh, my God. Hey, you got a problem in Minnesota? We'll fix that. Worry too much about fraud in Minnesota with that walls? We know how to fix that. We got a problem with this part of the Middle East. Know how to fix that. We could change your direction because they know and they think that you can't handle two different ideas simultaneously at the same time, as Scott Fitzgerald instructed us to do. You see, the modern system doesn't need to convince you of one truth. It only needs to exhaust you and confuse you and make you give up and make you doubt your own perceptions, where you say, oh, the hell with it. You see, if people stop trusting themselves, then they become easy to steer and to veer and to direct. It's like sleight of hand. And this is why certain experiences are treated as unserious or embarrassing. Moments of intuition, moments of aha, the epiphany moments, unexplained coincidences, sudden clarity, emotional recognition, this limpidity, to use the correct word, that arrives before logic catches up, these things are dismissed because they bypass, they completely short circuit the approved channels of authority, and they don't want you to think that. See, they remind people that consciousness is not fully programmable. See, are you following this? Now, from this perspective, the discomfort people feel today is not random anxiety. It's the friction created when I guess lived experience no longer aligns with the official script. When perception and reality don't connect. Time feels strange. Things are weird. Events feel repetitive. Culture feels frozen. Looping the same conflicts over and over again in the same outrage and anger cycles, the same manufactured crises over and over. It's the Hegelian dialectic, right? Problem, reaction, solution. The whole notion of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. Please stop this and look this up. See for yourself. It makes perfect sense. Do you ever think that progress feels artificial? Like motion without movement. We're moving, I think. And that sensation alone would be unsettling enough. But it's compounded by another observation. The people and institutions that claim to be in control, whatever they are, they no longer look composed or in control or rational. They look reactive and scary. They look impatient and frightful and on a hair trigger, especially mainstream media news, they're shuttering everything. And they have to comply more and more. Comply and comport or dissolve. And they look sloppy. They overcorrect. They censor clumsily. And they escalate where silence would have worked before. See, and that's not the behavior of a confident system. No. That's the behavior of something losing its grip. And Candace Owens has figured this out. And every time she says something, every time she posts a video, every time she comments, the bad guys, the black hats say, oh, Jesus, what now? Refute her. And I don't know, what they do is they just send out these harpies, these battalions of winged, whatever they are, and they just mock her. She's crazy. She's this. She's drinking the Kool-Aid. Let's have another meme. I saw one today, a meme or some Giuffre or something. Her drinking the Kool-Aid. See, in this worldview, awareness itself is the threat. Not activism, not rebellion. Awareness, sentience, and the simple act of noticing patterns. Remember what I told you about the murmurations of questioning incentives and comparing outcomes to propositions? Once people begin to do that, it all comes tumbling down, and the system cannot function smoothly. See, it depends on passive participation, not informed resistance. They want you over there. Just look over here. We'll tell you what to see. Okay, now change the channel. See, this helps explain why personal attacks replace substantive argument, substantive engagement, substantive dispute or a riposte. You see, when someone raises questions that cannot be easily refuted, the only remaining tactic is character assassination. That's it. Make the questioner look unstable, dangerous, stupid, crazy, motivated by ego or malice. If you can't disprove the argument, discredit the person making it. That's all they've got against her. And she knows it, and she's winning. By the way, let others pay attention to this. They did it to Trump. They do it to anybody new, anybody who comes along that they can't figure out. Or if they're losing, they just attack them. Attack the way they look, attack the way they speak. Go after their mannerisms, mock them, ridicule them, lampoon them, but never address what they're saying. And this isn't new. It's a pattern repeated throughout history. Whistleblowers, for example. Whistleblowers are ridiculed before they're even acknowledged. Heretics are demonized before they're vindicated. I'm heretical, my friend. So are you. We're mavericks. We are contrarians. Ooh, ain't it grand? Huh? Well, I like that. I think I just soiled myself. You see, the consequence is consistent. First denial, then mockery, you know the routine, then anger, then quiet admission years later when the cost of suppression becomes higher than the cost of truth, when they say reluctantly, okay, you're right. Okay. Our day will come. And what makes the current moment unique is the scale and the speed at which this pattern is unfolding. Information moves constantly. Contradictions are archived. Receipts, so to speak, and records are permanent. And attempts to erase or rewrite narratives are noticed immediately. Oh, remember the old playbook? It assumes short memory. Remember that? And centralized control. Not anymore. Neither exists anymore. Nope. It's a different world there, Sparky. And another core idea in this framework is that human consciousness is not as passive as modern materialism suggests. The thoughts shape behavior and beliefs, influence outcomes. But collective focus matters more than anything else. And this is not mystical or in a cartoon sense. I don't mean that. It's observable in markets and politics, in real time, in culture, an observable fact. And what people expect tends to materialize. See, what they fear often manifests. And what they ignore completely festers. If consciousness, and by the way, there's such a wonderful concept of consciousness. Read everything on YouTube about it, especially in view of what's going on with AI and the whole notion of when is sentience and sapience and all of this stuff. When does something think? When is there self-awareness? But anyway, if consciousness, as we understand it, has any causal power at all, then controlling attention becomes the most important objective. If you flood the environment with noise, if you keep people focused on surface level conflict, kind of bumper sticker stuff, if you encourage endless consumption and distraction, anything to prevent sustained reflection, anything to keep people from asking fundamental, foundational questions about meaning and truth and direction and agency, if you can do that, you're almost there. Remember, currency is the real, or I should say rather information, what am I saying? Data is the real currency of the 21st century. Not crypto, it's information and data. How do you know what you know? Epistemology, ontology, the idea of knowledge. How do you know what you know? Why do you believe versus what you know? Remember, if there was truth to something, if there were fact, you wouldn't need faith. And this is where technology enters the picture. Not as a neutral tool, but as an amplifier, as a critical aspect of this. Screens accelerate everything. Emotion spreads faster than thought, and outrage outpaces understanding. Algorithms reward reaction, not contemplation, not thought, not synthesis, but reaction. Over time, this erodes the ability to sit with complexity. It also erodes and destroys patience for ambiguity. Remember, today, people can't do this. Young people in particular, I'm anxious. I have anxiety. I can't take this. I'm anxious. People are trained to demand instant answers or dismiss the question entirely. It's where we are right now, my friends. And that's why this experience with Candace, it's a tutorial. And yet, despite all of this, something is breaking through. Something vast. A growing number of people report the same feeling, that something is very wrong. Not in a single policy sense, but in the structure of reality as it is being presented to them. They sense manipulation. They sense omission. They sense that the story they are being told is incomplete. And you probably feel the same way. And when individuals explicate and articulate this feeling, they're not offering a unified theory. They're offering fragments, little fractals, so to speak, observations, anomalies, questions. Understand that the establishment response treats these fragments, if you will, as dangerous, because fragments, little shards of thought and opinion, can connect. And once enough people compare notes, patterns emerge. Patterns threaten centralized authority. This is well thought out, my friend. And that's why Candace presents the fear. See, this is why the reaction is not the debate. And the reaction is not to debate, but to suppress. Debate assumes good faith and shared reality. Give and take. What do you think? What do I think? Let me refute it. Let me come back with it. Suppression assumes fragility. It assumes that even exposure to the question is risky. Don't even risk these people thinking. That alone should prompt skepticism. You see, another import and another fact which is so critical about all of this is the idea that power structures often misunderstand the very people they seek to control. And they assume cynicism where there is sincerity. And they assume ignorance. They assume ignorance when there is discernment. And they mistake compliance for belief. And over time, this miscalculation compounds. My friend, what we have right now is something very, very serious. Remember, when pressure increases, these structures often double down on the same tactics that cause resistance in the first place. More censorship, more moralizing, more limitation of thought, more coercion, more emotional blackmail. Each escalation widens the gap between official messaging and lived experience. Remember, it's almost like they want to change what you think through brainwashing, menticide. And this creates the feedback loop. People feel gaslit. They retreat from institutional trust. Alternative narrative flourishes. And then authorities respond with more control. Trust erodes further. Eventually, legitimacy collapses, not because of a single revelation, and not because of some kind of accumulated disbelief. No, but it's the loop. It's the same thing. And within this incredible context, dear friend, individuals who articulate, individuals who explain, who expatiate, who meme, who limb, I should say, and limb memes, but who explain, those who explain these dynamics clearly become the lightning rods. They're not necessarily saying anything new. They're saying it plainly. They're reminding you of what it's to think and that it's okay to think. And they and we refuse to adopt the sanctioned language. We do not hedge every sentence with disclaimers. We speak directly. And that alone, as you see, is perceived as a threat. And the hostility, the abject hostility that is directed at such figures like Candace, is often disproportionate to their claims. Does she deserve any of this? And that disproportion is revealing. It suggests dread and fear, not confidence. It suggests that the system recognizes its own vulnerability, even if it can't admit it publicly. That's exactly what's happening. My friends, there is also and I'll say it, a spiritual dimension to this framework. Though it doesn't require religious belief per se to understand it, but it's the idea that humans are more consumers and data points, that there is something irreducible about conscience, about morality, about intuition, and moral perception. And attempts to flatten humanity into these little predictable inputs, all of that generates resistance at a deep level. When people are told, when you are told, when I am told, that our instincts are wrong, that our memories are unreliable, and that our values are kind of outdated into the context of modernity, something in them pushes back. You know how it is. Something says, Not always consciously, sometimes as anxiety, and sometimes as anger, and sometimes as withdrawal, sometimes as curiosity. And that pushback is not inherently political. It's, and this may really sound highfalutin, it's existential. It's about responsibility and agency and control. It's about whether individuals are allowed to interpret their own experience, or must we defer to authority, people who decide what is and isn't acceptable. And the current backlash that you're seeing with Candace and others, and this division among conservative Republicans and MAGA and whatever it is, all of this rebellion against open inquiry reflects a system struggling desperately with that question. And it wants obedience without belief and compliance without understanding. It wants you to remain silent without consent. But silence achieved through intimidation doesn't last. It breeds resentment, and it sharpens your awareness. All of this makes you smarter. This is why attempts to shame or isolate dissenters like Candace and others backfire all the time. They draw attention, they invite sympathy, and they confirm the suspicion, and it has the backwards effect. It elevates her. People now are more fascinated by her because of all the people who say don't listen to her. And it rekindles the suspicion that something's being hidden. And by the way, each overreaction recruits new skeptics. That's why you're probably here. You're probably here because you're thinking, what's going on here? You know something's wrong, but you want to know what it is. And there's also a recurring theme of inevitability in this worldview. The sense that certain outcomes cannot be prevented, only delayed, and that control mechanisms are losing effectiveness. Remember, history is not linear, it's cyclical. What is it? It doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. With moments of consolidation followed by moments of complete rupture. From this perspective, dear friend, the current moment that we're experiencing feels like a transition. Not necessarily towards utopia or catastrophe, but towards exposure, enlightenment, towards a reckoning, towards the collapse of narratives in the official story that no longer hold. I love this. And this doesn't mean everything that challenges official accounts is true. Please, we're not saying that. It means that the reflexive automatic patellar dismissal of challenge is no longer credible. And it means that the burden of proof has shifted. Authority now has to earn trust rather than assume it. That's what this is about. And the most unsettling implication of this entire framework is that many people sense what's happening. They sense the shift simultaneously. Not through coordination, but through a shared experience. They say, are you seeing this? Yep. And that shared sensing creates resonance. And resonance creates momentum. And momentum frightens institutions built on inertia and torpor. And this kind of a solidified, ossified, osseous, kind of stricture, stuck in the mud philosophy. And in the end, this way of thinking is less about specific claims and more about posture. It's about refusing to outsource perception. It's about trusting that questions are not crimes. It's okay to ask. It's okay to disbelieve. It's about recognizing that ridicule is often a mask for weakness. Dear, dear friend, dear patriot friend, dear member of the conspiratorium, I again welcome you. But I want to remind you, this is also about hope. Paradoxically, interestingly enough, the chaos and overreach of the current moment, brought out by a lot of stories involving Candace, the overreach of the moment, all of these are seen not as signs of defeat, but as signs of exhaustion. And the part of the entrenched power, they recognize this. See, when control becomes obvious, it loses effectiveness. And when manipulation becomes visible, it fails. You're not supposed to see what's happening. It's like sleight of hand. If you can see what they're doing, what's the point? And the core message is simple. Even if the implications are vast, pay attention. Notice patterns. Pay attention. Do not be intimidated out of curiosity. Do not accept character attacks. It's okay. Be a conspiracy theorist. As substitutes for answers, fine. It's okay. Understand that pressure often means proximity to something real. You're getting close. You're successively approximating and approaching the truth. And whether one interprets this in some kind of psychological, political, or technological, or spiritual, or religious terms. Doesn't matter. The conclusion is the same. A system that cannot tolerate questions is not stable. And a population, us, a population that begins to ask those questions calmly and persistently, we are more powerful than it realizes. My friends, this is not a call to panic. It's a call for clarity, limpidity, pellucidity, to patience, to discernment, to the quiet confidence that comes from understanding that awareness itself changes the game. And once that awareness spreads, no amount of noise can fully contain it. We are on fire, my friends. I want you to understand this. Do not let this moment go without recognizing these facts. This is monumental. This is seismic. This is a red pill moment for many of you. And I welcome you. Join the conspiratorium. Join your brothers and sisters in truth, in curiosity, in incredulity. Let me thank you. As I always tell you, for years I never looked at any of the comments because they're brutal. But your comments have been so great, so kind, and so beautiful and generous. I can't thank you enough. I can't, and I mean that. So I ask you to comment. I appreciate that immensely. By the way, you've been so great in following my wife at Lynn's Warriors in her indefatigable quest to quash and destroy child predation, human trafficking at Lynn's Warriors. I thank you for that. That's our battle, too, in addition to everything that's going on right now. So what I want you to do is simply this. First, accept my thanks. Number 2, like this video. You know how that works. Subscribe to the channel. Subscribe. Get those metrics up. Put us in the HOV lane. And also, hit that little bell so you're notified of live streams and new videos. And I've got some questions in the comment section, which I will put up for you to review. Talk about them. Let's talk. Let's exchange. Let's take this conversation momentum and continue it. And let's not remember, or forget I should say, Candace Owens is in the crosshairs. She needs it. And needs us, I should say. And we're there in truth. Okay? Good. Now do me a favor, my friend. Comment as you see fit.